So this video is a follow-up to my review of the organisation known as Ayahuasca International, also known as Inner Mastery, and the various other names that they go by. And if you haven't seen that video, then I really recommend you watch it first because it gives a lot of context to what gets discussed here. Now, after my review of Ayahuasca International, I received a message from someone who used to work inside the organisation, and they wanted to share their experience of working for them. The conversation that follows is from someone who is going to go under the alias of Nemed, as she wants to remain anonymous. Now, Nemed was originally a customer of Ayahuasca International, and she participated in several of their ayahuasca retreats. Unlike me, however, she had a much more positive experience with them. So much so, in fact, she decided she wanted to become a part of the organisation and go through the facilitator training programme. But once she was inside the organisation, both working at the retreats and also going through the facilitator training, she began to see things she wasn't comfortable with, which led to her leaving the organisation. In this conversation, we talk about how the staff are overworked, the kind of cult-like behaviour within the organisation, and how its leader seems to have a strange obsession with male genitalia. Now, just before we get into it, I want to give a bit of context to the facilitator training that we discussed. In one of my previous videos, I talked about how opposed I am when organisations get you to pay them in order to give you a job. And in the case of Ayahuasca International, I just wanted to break down those costs so you realise just how much cash they are milking from well-intentioned people who just want to work with ayahuasca. So if you want to be a facilitator for Ayahuasca International, first you need to attend a minimum of 3 of their retreats at around €450 a piece. So that's 3 450s, €1,350. After that, you need to attend a minimum of 6 facilitator training sessions, which are priced at €800 each. On top of that, you have to pay extra to attend things like workshops for rapé or bufo, and they cost an additional €100 each per workshop. And you might attend, say, 2 of these on average per training session. So 6 times 200 gives an extra €1,200. So the total upfront costs for you to have the privilege of working for Ayahuasca International is €7,500. €7,500 that someone has to pay just to work for this organisation. And as Nemed describes, that doesn't even guarantee that you will actually even get any work, or if you do get work, that you even get paid. And as you're going to hear, with the rate that these guys burn through their staff, this facilitator training is probably quite a lucrative product for them. Anyway, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Nemed for reaching out to me. I really enjoyed our conversation. We actually talked for over an hour, so I'm going to have to slice this up into different sections, so stay tuned for part 2. Now, this was the first time I've ever attempted a long-form discussion like this, so apologies if it's a little bit amateur. But if you do like this kind of content, let me know in the comments and I will look into doing more of it. Okay, so here's a conversation. I hope you find it informative. And as always, if you enjoy the content here on Adeptus Psychonautica, then please subscribe to the channel. Okay, so I'm on the call with Nemed, and Nemed is an alias because she wants to remain anonymous. But Nemed, perhaps you could introduce sort of what your experience was with Ayahuasca International. Perhaps, starting with what kind of period it was that you worked with them and for how long.
I worked with them from January last year and until October. It started out as basically working in the kitchen, helping out at the retreats with the preparations, with the cleaning, things like that. And since I really wanted to work more with the organization, and I wanted to go to the school and learn to become a facilitator, I started eventually getting more engaged and working with gathering people to the retreats, being sort of like a contact person. And I was basically talking to people who are interested in the retreats and getting in touch with them and helping them to sign up and help them with the preparation for the retreats with things like, guidelines about things to think about before they go to the retreats, like foods they should avoid. And but there weren't really that many recommendations from Inner Mastery regarding the diet because they don't really follow a dieta. It's basically their philosophy is eat whatever, it doesn't matter.
If I could just backtrack a little bit from when you started working, because originally you were a customer, you were a guest on one of the retreats, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, because you're not even allowed to go to the school until you've finished at least 3 retreats.
Yeah.
So I've actually been to 4 before I went to the school. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how did you find that? How was your experience with them?
It was a bit mixed. Mostly positive. Mostly because the people working there at the time that I was a participant, they were very nice people. They had their hearts in the right place. But my problems actually started when I got more involved with the work aspects of the company. That's when I started to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I started my training, but I quit very early on because like I said, I just wasn't feeling comfortable with the whole thing. But it was mostly in.
What roles were you doing, and what kind of hours would that equal for your time? What would an average day look like for you?
It would basically be waking up around 7 or maybe earlier to prepare the breakfast, and it was working in the kitchen and putting out all of the different foods and taking care of the guests, helping them if they had any questions or they had any special needs with regards to the diet, if anyone was allergic to anything, and so on. And after breakfast, usually there was the integration, but I wasn't really participating in the integration if I had time. If not, then I went straight back to the kitchen to continue working on lunch. And after lunch, it was a little bit of time, maybe an hour or so for resting. But during the time when everyone else were resting and I was sitting at the computer to catch up with correspondence, getting replies, to various emails and phone people who were calling me on the phone asking about the retreats. And there was quite a lot of work piling up, so it was hard to keep up with it. And there was a lot of pressure from my supervisor, who was messaging me and telling me that, I appreciate that you're probably busy, but you have a lot of incoming messages, and how is that going? And there was this constant pressure. I felt that she was telling me to get stuff done, but yeah, it was really difficult to juggle all these things at once.
So you'd come out of doing all these kitchen and marketing roles,
Yeah.
and then you mentioned that you would be helping out in the ceremonies as well.
Yeah.
So I guess that would carry you through to like the early hours of the morning. Would that be
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So 7 in the morning till sometimes
Yeah, till maybe 2 o'clock at night. It really depends on how many participants there were at the retreat.
Yeah. Wow, it's a big long work day then.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, so you mentioned you were a customer and then you transitioned into this role of helping them. Are you already doing the facilitator course at this point, or did that come later on?
First, I was helping out in the kitchen. The facilitator course came later on.
Okay.
I went. It was kind of. It wasn't really consistent because I felt like I didn't really have the funds to go, travel to Spain and go to school and put all of this money on doing that course. So this was kind of like a work exchange. So in exchange for going to the school, instead of paying out of pocket, I would work.
Right. Okay.
So it was that kind of deal.
So you weren't you weren't being paid directly for this. You were kind of banking that credit with them, which you could then use for training later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
So when you actually begun the facilitator training, can you tell us a little bit about what happened there? I mean, what does facilitator training involve?
It's like a regular retreat, only that you get to go to various workshops. You get to go to the conscious school, which is basically Alberto Varela having like, it's like a seminar. He talks about consciousness, and there are how do you say it? You can participate in watching how Kambo is applied, for instance, or you can help out to learn. And the ayahuasca, like the tomas, you get a much bigger dose than you would get at the regular retreat. So it's like twice the dose or something like that. So you go a lot deeper into the experience than you would at a regular retreat.
Yeah.
But it's not really, you're not really being trained directly. It's not like going to an actual school where they show you and train you hands-on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So it would be a more, like you said, a deeper dose of ayahuasca with some seminars sort of
Yes.
thrown in.
Yeah.
And roughly how many of you would there be in a class? What's the size of a typical sort of facilitator group?
It was about 30 people or something at the Thomas, but not all of the people at the retreat were students at the school. Some of them were just there for a retreat.
In regards to like the actual the therapy style that they talk about, so is this not how do they qualify that somebody's a psychotherapist? I mean, if as I say, I'm absolutely fine with them going down this psychotherapy route, but then what's the idea or what's the methodology that they're following, and how does that get passed on to the facilitators?
From my understanding, it's basically going through the training, which is learning about all these different medicines through the workshops where you get to experience the medicines, and going to the conscious school. And I don't know if there's anything more that they go through in the training, to be honest. And that's what they've told me, and that's what I know, and that's what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of my biggest concerns with them is that some of the, I'd say, techniques that they seem to be using were certainly very sort of like, powerful, intimate, techniques that can make people very vulnerable. And I just wasn't sure that they were qualified to do these things. Like, there's getting people to really open up and be vulnerable while there's 40 other people watching. I mean, it was quite a disturbing experience to watch some of these things, and I wondered if that was something that they'd actually, the facilitators were taught, or if they were just making up on the spot, or. But yeah. So I just want to come back a little bit to the the training that you mentioned, because I'm not remembering your original notes. You mentioned that they were like add-ons to the train. So you've already, just to kind of set the scene, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've banked this kind of credit with them for working with them, and then you've travelled to Spain, I believe, to take part in this training.
Yes.
So at this, when you've done that, was this completely on the stuff that you banked, or did you have to pay anything additional as well?
Yeah, sure. For the workshops, yeah. Because when you're there as a student, of course you want to partake in the workshops, because otherwise, what's the point? You could have just gone to a regular retreat. At least that's what I was thinking. And all of the workshops cost extra, which I don't particularly mind, because I think that that it's only fair that the facilitators get paid for their work.
Mhm.
But I still kind of felt a little bit pressured that, okay, so it's already kind of expensive, and I also have to pay these extra fees as well.
Yeah.
So for someone on a tight budget, it's a bit too much. I felt, at least. I don't want to sound cheap or anything. There were workshops for rapé, for instance, where we would learn about the different kinds of rapé and the purpose of rapé, why it's used, how it's used, and we would get to try different kinds of rapé. And there were workshops um, for holotropic breathing,
Mhm.
workshops for Kambo, and various other things. There was the conscious school as well, and there was another workshop with Chimu. It's a different medicine. So it was basically, we got to try them hands on. It wasn't just like in theory.
And by trying them, that would then qualify you to then be able to go administer them to somebody else on a retreat. Is that how it works?
I'm guessing after a time, if you go to the schools until you're qualified to do so, or they qualify you to do so, then I'm guessing, yeah.
Yeah.
But from trying them just once, I definitely think that they wouldn't, like, they have to qualify someone first before they can go and become a facilitator and administer anything.
Did they ever do any kind of like background checks on you as a person? Do they screen the facilitators at all?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge, to be honest.
Hmm.
Not what I know anyway. They didn't do any background checks on me or anyone I know who's worked there. And for the school, you have to basically write a handwritten letter and give it to Alberto Varela himself, as a motivation as to why you want to go to the school. But besides that, I don't know if they do any background checks. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned Alberto. So
Mhm.
I guess let's sort of pivot onto him. So what's your take on Alberto? And I'll just be clear, I've never met the guy. My only knowledge of him is from reading some of the articles that he himself puts on the Inner Mastery website, and then obviously seeing some of the more critical articles about him. But you've
Mhm.
actually met him in person.
I've introduced myself to him once, and he had the integration one time, and he had the conscious schools.
Mhm.
So I was listening to him talk, but other than that, I've never really had a conversation with him in person. So that's basically all I know about him.
And what's the kind of perception of him within the school? Is he seen as is he just the business owner, or is he like a spiritual leader? Well, not spiritual, because I know that's not the aspect. Is
Yeah, no, he's definitely seen more as a leader.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the impression I got, that he is kind of revered in a way.
Like a kind of cult of personality sort of thing almost, or
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I would say that's a fair description.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I remember when you first got in contact with me and sent me the notes, and my thought as I was reading through it, when you were describing
Mm.
how they how the organization treats the staff, and the things that are expected of you to work, and then some of the things they would say to you about you know you can sleep another time, this is more important, you need to
Hmm.
you know these kind of statements. And the thought that jumped out at me was, you could change a few words around here, and this could be a description of Scientology or
Oh,
some
for sure, for
it
sure. I actually, sorry to cut you off.
no, please.
Uh, I actually have a friend who also went to the training, and she wanted to become a facilitator as well. And she also quit after 2 school cycles because she has actually been a member of the Scientologists for 1.5 years or
Hmm.
something like that. And she told me that she started to see very clear patterns,
Yeah,
very clear similarities. And when she saw that, she was basically like, nope, I'm done. I'm not continuing. I don't want this. Goodbye.
yeah. I mean,
Mm,
it's yeah. I thought the similarities were striking in this kind
mm,
of, and particularly with how the people it sounds like yourself, who you're going into this with such good intentions and wanting to
mm,
be part of something where you feel like you're going to make a huge difference,
yeah,
and it just feels like they just suck it out of you. They just
yeah.
it's kind of take, and then lots of kind of, when you mention these financial add-ons and stuff,
Mm,
again,
mm,
very similar kind of business model
mm.
to Scientologists. So I suppose that then does, ask a question: would you perceive this organization as a kind of cult?
Definitely. I didn't think about it when I was a part of it. But actually, my mom jokingly asked me, "Are you part of a cult or something?" And and at the time, I was laughing at her and said, "No, no, no, it's not a cult. It's not like that at all." But
Hmm.
in retrospect, thinking about, I was actually watching a video on YouTube. There's this guy who makes these really good videos, actualize.org,
Hmm.
and he was talking about cults. He was describing what a cult is and all of the characteristics of a cult, and I was like, oh my God. They just fit. They fit into, if you would say that there's like 50 characteristics of a cult, I would say they fit into 48 of them.
Hmm. And
Mm.
they do use this kind of line of like, we're saving the world, kind of, or we're awakening the world. Is that?
Oh yes, oh yes, for sure. Oh yes, that was they were having seminars where they would get people interested in their organization and interested in the medicines, where they would invite people who were interested in ayahuasca, and who didn't know about the shamanic remedies and stuff but wanted to find out more. And that was the whole theme of their seminars. It was that, oh, we don't have time, we have to act quick, we have to wake people up because yeah, it was pretty much like a doomsday scenario in a way, that which I can kind of understand, and there is some truth to that, the whole creeping totalitarianism that's going on in the world right now.
Hmm.
But I felt kind of exaggerated, and that's also something very typical of a cult as well.
Yeah, yeah. Again, there's definitely a lot of parallels, and I think the thing what I always think with those kind of situations is, do they think that what they are doing is the actual, is the cure to the world's problems, or is that just a kind of a part of it, and there's something else going on behind the scenes? So what I kind of mean there is that, like, again, to use Scientology as an example, they have the kind of the line of, we're here to save the world, and
Mm,
then you think that by supporting this organization, there's actually a bigger project happening behind the scenes, and you're okay. So you're cleaning the toilets and you're, sweeping the floors, and that's just keeping the lights on because these guys are doing something important over there, and you're not privy to it. But I just wondered, with Ayahuasca International, is that the case, or do they think that just by doing these these retreats across Europe, that's the thing that's actually going to fix it?
that's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that, to be honest, because I don't really know what their motives are. Like, at the depth and behind the scenes. But
Do you think do you think there was something behind the scenes, or do you think that what you saw pretty much you saw the sort of the organization? There wasn't like what you saw and then like a secret club going on somewhere else where they kind of brainstorm how to bring about the global awareness?
No, not that I know of. I know that they would hold conferences for the people working in the organization where the facilitators and how do you call them, integrators and just everyone working in the organization would get together and they would talk about I don't know how to improve things, I guess, because I've never actually been to a conference.
Yeah.
So I don't know what comes up there. But that's what I know, at least. I don't know if they have any secret meetings or something like that.
And these conferences these are like internal things, because I don't see them having much of a presence at things like, there's an ayahuasca conference coming up in Spain. I think it's next month, and there's a lot of these kind of global ayahuasca organizations. And as far as I'm aware, they Ayahuasca International don't seem to be taken seriously within those circles. So the conferences that you're referring to, is this just like an internal thing where they sort of?
It's internal. No, it's not open to the public. It's just for the people working there.
So I just wanted to sort of go back to Alberto, because one of the pieces of criticism that's been leveled at him is that he comes across as a bit of a sexual deviant. There's been some complaints against him, sort of coercing people into sort of sexual manipulations. Did you have any experience of anything of that nature, or is that, do you think that's something that might be being overblown, or do you have any take on that at all?
I don't know if it's overblown, because I've heard I read a blog post or a letter at some point about it was written by a woman who shared her story about I think it was the same story that you brought up in your video about getting her high on ayahuasca and having her masturbate or something like that in front of him, and telling her that she's very sexually repressed and she needs to open up and all that sort of thing. But I've never experienced that at the retreats. The only thing that I found was a little bit uncomfortable or inappropriate was that during one of the conscious school sessions that he I don't know, he seems to have this kind of, my impression was that he seems to have this kind of Freudian penis fixation. And because he was talking the whole time about how people are thinking like penises. He basically stuck a dildo on his forehead, and it was supposed to be funny, and it kind of was, because we were all laughing, and that's fine. But what I found a bit uncomfortable was that his 10-year-old daughter was singing a song about penises, and it was recorded from when she was even younger. So I was kind of worried a little bit about that child.
Yeah. Oh
and I have a friend.
So was the daughter in the room while he's got the thing stuck on his head? His daughter was there at that point?
Oh yeah. She was there. Yeah. I actually have a former participant friend who is a social worker, and when I told her that, she got really worried, because that's not really appropriate for a child to act that way.
So just coming back to your sort of your experience as you're moving through this training. So you mentioned that you did 2 of these 4-day courses, and am I right in thinking that you have to do 6 of them in total to become a facilitator?
Yes. Six
Yeah.
six of them. I don't know if it's in total because I think that there are many facilitators who do more of them, and I know that those who already work as facilitators, they go through many school cycles. One of them went through 12.
Right. Okay. But there's no sort of graduation then. You kind of you keep up with the training's ongoing. Would that be correct?
From what I understand, because I know people who have gone through many more training cycles than I have, and they were one of them was calling me and asking, how do I know, or when how do I know when I'm finished?
Hmm.
Because I've gone through almost six now, and they haven't told me anything about, if I'm ready to start working or not, and I have no clue if I'm going to be finished with the next cycle. So to be honest, I don't know if they give any kind of certification or anything.
So after you'd done your sort of your two sessions, what was the sort of the turning point for you? At what point did you kind of realize this is not really with the direction you want to go in? Was there kind of an epiphany, or was it just an accumulation of the things that we talked about?
It was both, to be honest. I have had warning signs for a while since my very first training cycle. After the second night, one of my friends on Facebook sent me a message with a link to that letter we talked about
Yeah.
that woman who wrote about her experience, and also a link to the open letter that the indigenous wrote about
Yeah.
Alberto. And I felt like that was a sign, and but I kind of ignored it because I felt, I really want to do this, and I wanted to work with the medicine. So I kind of shrugged it off, I guess. And but there have been signs for many months, and it was an accumulation, and but I would say what really did it for me was the way that they treated my partner after he left them.
Okay. So do you want to tell us a bit about sort of what role that your partner played? Because you met him on one of these retreats. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what
Yeah.
was he doing there, and what was the treatment that you're talking about?
Oh, he was a facilitator. He facilitated ayahuasca. He facilitated chimu. He had many different workshops and different. He is kind of an expert in many different things because he is a shaman
Mhm.
since many years. Um, and it was basically for him. It was the whole working from morning well into the night, never getting enough sleep. He felt very exploited in a way, that he didn't have the time to meditate or to exercise, or for any kind of self-care, really.
Mhm.
And then he felt like he couldn't live that way anymore, and he felt that he was being lied to as well, which was actually correct. It turned out to be correct later on, because we found out about a week ago that he wasn't getting paid for the workshops that he was having. So he decided to leave them, and shortly after he left them, they were basically just slandering him, just talking about uh, spreading these rumors about him, basically about how he was inappropriate with women, that he had been flirting, or even doing other things.
Mhm.
I don't really know, but from all I can know is all I can say is that from what I know, how he is, I can definitely say that that's not true. That's really not how he is as a person, and I just feel that that they were doing that deliberately to destroy his reputation.
Were they saying things in a response to stuff that he was saying, or were they just going after him?
They were just going after him because he wasn't saying anything. He just left them,
Hmm.
basically. And I think that it was kind of like a revenge or something, because maybe they needed some kind of explanation as to why he just up and left.
It's because he doesn't.
Maybe.
He just doesn't want to save the world. That's his problem. He just doesn't. He just wants to keep the world in darkness. Clearly.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm thinking that maybe they were really upset and angry that he just, up and left without announcing it. And I guess they needed some kind of explanation that, it was because of him, not because of them.
Yeah.
So that he was the boogeyman, and they kind of like an excuse, like, oh, we had to let him go because he was behaving in an inappropriate manner or something like that,
Yeah.
which is totally not true.